Hello. Hi, my name is Charlie Adamala. I'm the Chief Information Officer here at ISU. I'm here to make brief remarks and introduce the president of the university. I do have a sheet here because I tend to go off script too often. This has never worked. So Craig has the thing to pull me out if I go off track too much. Let me start off by saying this event is the brainchild of the Bloomington Normal Innovation Alliance, which all of you have heard of and know all about. Well, I'm sure you haven't, right? So let me talk about how this began, and it'll be my story. There's others with their own pieces there, and Jamie and others will talk about it when they get a chance, right? So I was hired to work at ISU in 2016, and I came from Philadelphia. My family and I immediately connected with the community here, and we've been calling the area a hidden gem, right from the get-go. Within a year, I realized it's a hidden gem for other reasons. The central Illinois area is well connected by rail, road, air, and even a river. There's plenty of land and water. We have one of the best community colleges here in the state, the best public university, and the best private university. Heartland, Wesleyan, and ISU form a powerful group of higher education institutions. Additionally, I'm constantly inspired by the students we attract. I can't say enough about that. I mean, people talk about Gen Z and all the rest of that. There's something about the students that I've met here. Fully 92% of our students come from Illinois. My wife studied at Nebraska, and she thinks it's got something to do with detasseling corn. Something about that makes it really tough. So whatever it is, we've got great students here. With Caterpillar, John Deere, TCCI, and now Rivian, we have significant firms in the area involved with advanced manufacturing. We have nationally known companies like State Farm, Country, and Groma. These are the large firms that everyone talks about. But I've come to appreciate the hundreds of smaller, thriving businesses. Many of you are represented here. This is more apparent to folks like me who have moved into the community and been welcomed into it. So back in 2017, I started to go around talking to people about, hey, you know, we've got something here, right? Now, if you remember, 2017 was the Rona budget crisis. So I was crazy already, but it sounded even more crazy then, where I was really optimistic about Illinois and the future of Illinois, Central Illinois specifically. So I said, the vision I had was that I-74 corridor, right, all the way from Champaign out to Peoria. I said, well, what if that becomes a major metropolitan area in 20 years, right? Imagine a light rail connecting us all, right? We don't need big skyscrapers. My wife's an architect. She doesn't like those big buildings. But we have Decatur. We have all these places here that could be connected and become this inspiring area that could become a major metropolitan area in the future. Like I said, it mostly fell on deaf ears, right? Budget prices, high property taxes. I'm going, I like it here, right? Well, fortunately, Mark D from Serban connected me with Jamie, and Jamie at that time was a councilman. You want to wave your hand a little bit. He was a councilman for Bloomington. And then Kevin McCarthy, I don't know if he's here. Kevin is a council person with Normal. So the three of us sat down and I had someone to hear me out. And then eventually that turned into a bigger group. And we in 2020 got the presidents of Wesleyan, Heartland, ISU, we got the mayors, two mayors, and then we got McLean County, the Planning Commission to sign off on a MOU that basically named us the Bloomington Normal Innovation Alliance. The EDC with Patrick and the Chamber of Commerce also have been part of it. So we meet regularly and talk about how we're going to change the world or take over the world as it may be. And we've already, in the 2 years, we've got to know each other, and it's become a clearinghouse. Leon from Wesleyan's there all the time. And we talk about how we can work together. And sometimes we get an opportunity to apply for a grant together. We've got a chance to sit down and talk about how the Illinois broadband idea where they're trying to light up the rural areas, how can we be part of it? These are things that ISU normally would not be part of. We've responded to these opportunities. Recently, ISU had a chance to apply for a grant that Governor Pritzker put together, and we had to come together very quickly. And the Bloomington Normal Innovation Alliance helped me do that. We got a meeting within 3 days, I think, with very influential people on the call. Okay, so the BNIA members, would you stand up and be recognized? There should be one at every table. And if there isn't, we will put someone there. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a table without someone there. Thank you very much. So very early on, one of the areas that we thought would be very helpful is how serving the small to medium businesses, right, in cybersecurity. So about a year ago, we said, hey, it was actually Leon came up with this thing, and he said, how can we connect our students who are interns at Wesleyan, Heartland, ISU, with the small to medium businesses who may need training, who may need some sort of direction around cybersecurity. What was awesome is that when we reached out to the Department of Homeland Security, we had a contact there and we said, hey, he's in Springfield. We said, what do you think of this thing? He immediately latched onto it and he said, that is one of his biggest issues is that he doesn't know how to reach all these small to medium companies. When there's a obvious threat, he knows how to reach us. He knows how to reach the big companies. He doesn't know how to reach the smaller firms. Mainly because, if you get an email from the DHS that says, hey, there's a cybersecurity threat, you're likely not going to click on it, right? Because we told everyone not to click on those things, right? So we don't know how to reach them. Then we had folks like Walt and others who also, once they heard about it, they said, yes, there is something there. We don't know what it is yet, but we should be able to serve the small to medium businesses, which, like I said before, was really exciting to me because I did recognize there's a thriving group of businesses there. So that's what we're here to talk about today. There's going to be a series of speakers and panelists. We encourage you to interact with them, come up with ideas. At the end of the day, I'll be taking notes. A few of us will be taking notes. At the end of the day, we'll talk about next steps, right? So I do want to thank our partners, CDWG, Julie, yeah, there she is. So I reached out to Julie and I said, hey, here's this crazy idea. Would you be able to partner with us? She was enthusiastic. She and her boss talked to a whole bunch of people, got Palo Alto, Proofpoint, Arctic Wolf. They all jumped in and they're the sponsors. So if you get to eat anything today, it's because of them, right? So do thank them. And then I also want to thank Erica. Where's Erica? Oh, there's Erica and Craig Jackson. Without those two, this event would not happen. I mean, I emailed, I called late at night. They were always at my beck and call. She did stuff. So do thank them. Also, if you get to eat anything, it's not just these folks who paid for it, but she actually got it for us. So do thank them. There's Kevin. Kevin's the other gentleman I said that was part of the initial group. Okay, so it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce President Andove Taruli. Let me tell you, I see a little bit of his life. He has been given exactly 10 minutes to get into the park, walk out here, get into the parking lot, go to the Bourne Student Center, and speak at another event that's completely different. I don't know if he knew about it when he woke up this morning, but he definitely, his assistant and I worked it all out. So you've got exactly 10 minutes. Now, the great thing about President Taruli is he's like me, he likes talking. So he is likely to blow every day deadline anyway. So do stop him, slow him down if you have to, right? He enthusiastically, I'll tell you straight up, because I'm in his cabinet, he is very enthusiastic about the small businesses. He wants to connect with the community in any way he can. He believes in the power of strategic thinking and hard work, and he's always looking for ways to support the workforce, economic development, and innovation in the area, not just with the big companies, but the whole community. He's a first-generation student. He graduated with a bachelor's and master's from the University of Jos in Nigeria, and he got his doctorate in geography from McMaster in Canada. He worked at the University of Oklahoma for many years and was a big intern before he joined ISU as our provost, just as the pandemic hit us. In fact, I remember very clearly him jumping on because it was the pandemic. He jumped on before he officially started at the university. He'd get on our cabinet calls. As many of you know, he was recently asked to step in as interim president. He took on this challenging task with confidence and humility, making quick decisions when needed. The university is steadily meeting its goals and its mission under his leadership. Well, with that, please give him a warm welcome. President Tarul.
Thank you so much, Charlie, and good morning to everyone. I'd like to begin with two apologies, which is never a good thing. If you have to start a talk with an apology, that's never good. But the first is to apologize for being late. Like Patty said, Charlie said, sometimes meetings get scheduled as if there's no transition time. So I apologize for that. And again, as Charlie mentioned, I do have to be at the Bond Student Center at 10:30. So the good thing is, even though I like talking, I have to be out of here. So I apologize that I'm not going to be able to stay with you for the whole day and listening to what I'm sure will be a very stimulating and exciting conversation. But I'm very excited to welcome you here to this Innovation Alliance Cybersecurity Summit. ISU is particularly honored to be able to host this event and to make it happen. So thank you all to the people who've organized it. Thank you all to the people who've made it happen. And most of all, thank you to all of you for coming here to discuss this very important topic. I think nothing is, sometimes things are cliches, but cliches exist for a reason. And one of them is every coin has two sides. And I think nothing could be more accurate than that with respect to cybersecurity. So we live in a world that is very interconnected, and we are putting more things in the into digital space and internet daily, banking, business operations, communications, government operations, all of that. And it's great. Everything works so much faster, so much easier. Everything is so much more efficient. But the flip side of that is everything is so much more risky as a result. And so protecting data and protecting the information that people have entrusted with us, to us, and that we need for our daily operations is no longer an afterthought. This is a critical, maybe the most critical element of any business operations. So we at Illinois State, we're extremely delighted that we have a very robust cybersecurity resources, not only in terms of the operational side, but also in the classroom and in the laboratories as well. So our communications and cybersecurity staff work really tirelessly. And I couldn't be happier with Charlie in leadership role, helping us each and every day to help our operations become more efficient, ward off those risks that we're talking about, but also help us to see around the bend in terms of what's coming next and how can we prepare for that. And I know that this is not a one-person job. Because of the interconnectedness of the systems, everyone who works in this space has to be interconnected and to share experiences and what you've learned so that together we can be one step ahead of the crooks. Oh, I see Dan Toby there. Thanks, Dan. So it's super exciting for all of the work that you're doing and the conversations that you're going to be having here today. So faculty and students are very major and valuable resources in business organizations and within the community. And with their thoughts, with their ideas and the information that they can share with you and all of us, I think this is going to be critical in helping us to keep critical missions operating and also continue to expand and improve on our lives. So as representatives of small and medium-sized businesses and nonprofits, you know that finding cybersecurity resources and expertise can be very challenging. And that's why this summit is very special and specifically suitable for you. So today's sessions will provide you with the essential information about the types and threats that are out there and how to implement the best practices to protect your businesses, your organizations, and how to anticipate those risks without crippling your core missions. You will hear from industry experts who will give you a straightforward look the challenges that we all face, along with practical steps to take to meet these challenges. The other thing I might add here is at Illinois State, we're very proud of the work that we're doing in this space. As some of you know, in 2019, I believe it was, we introduced a new program in cybersecurity, so a BS degree program in cybersecurity. We hoped to reach about 100 students in that major in 3 years. We're at 400 today. So we are doing our part to make sure that we produce the workforce that you need to work in this area. And we have also, we're in the process of submitting a proposal to IBHE to start a new degree program in data science. Now, all things going well, that program will come online in 2025. So the combination of our new engineering program also coming up in 2025, our cybersecurity program, which we continue to support, the data science program, and our computer science program for masters, which we built for 50 students at the graduate level. Because of demand, we expanded that to 160 graduate students in the computer science program last year. So all of the areas that are relevant in this field, ISU continues to invest in very aggressively, very proactively, and to support. And I hope that we will produce top-notch talent for all of your operations and your businesses. So this is a great meeting, great opportunity where you have a meeting of the minds to work together and to position not just your operations, but the region as a whole to be prepared for what comes next. And I personally couldn't be more excited that we're hosting this and to look forward to what you all come up with. So with that, I wish you a very successful deliberations and discussions. And again, apologize that I have to rush out to this next meeting. But thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Craig Jackson. I work at Illinois State for Charlie, and I'm a member of the Bloomington Normal Innovation Alliance as well. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's great to see this much interest in this topic, and we're hoping everybody gets a lot out of this event. One of the things, just to kind of walk through what we're doing. So we have a number of presentations. We have time after each presentation for some small group discussion, because we want to we don't want to just be talking at folks. We want as a community event, we want the community to be talking about some of the concerns they have, what they've learned, where they would like to go, and what additionally they may need from each other, from BNIA, or from our partners in the room. So after each presentation, there'll be a few 5 to 10 minutes for some small group conversation. Then we'll take a break. So after every presentation, I want to reiterate, there will be time for a break to check email, check in with the office, do what you got to do. So we're trying to maximize your time to focus on the presentations, while also giving you time to make sure that you're still able to connect with what you need to do. And with that, I'd like to introduce Walt Powell, who is with CDW. We're very excited about our partnership with CDW. We're big fans of CDW on campus. They've been very good to us as experts in the field, as well as providing us services and support that we need. Walt has a great wealth of information regarding cybersecurity. He has a passion for trying to figure out how to make the world safer from the bad guys, and what businesses can do in terms of setting up their procedures, policies, and procedures so that they can protect themselves from all the mayhem that's unfortunately out there right now. He currently leads a team of CISOs, who I think I've heard him refer to them as recovering CISOs from their life previously coming over to CDW. So not only did he do this previously, he's also training the next generation of CISOs to try to make this a better environment for all of us. With that, Walt, thank you.
Thank you very much. What time do I need to wrap this up?
Yeah, 45 minutes.
Okay. I didn't know if we needed to end early since we started late. All right. Said I needed to share this on the Zoom. Hey, success. Oh, now I don't see my presenter. So let me see if I can fix that. All right, awesome. I think we're off to the races. Good morning. Everybody excited to talk about cybersecurity all day? Awesome. All right, my name is Walt Powell, and like he said, I am a recovering CISO who leads a team of recovering CISOs, guys who worked out in the field as CISOs and got tired of having responsibilities and being woken up in the middle of the night and decided it would be easier to talk to you guys about high-level security topics. And so that's what we do now. I started off way back a long time ago in a university setting, much like this, teaching cybersecurity, and I call it cybersecurity, but so long ago it was barely cybersecurity at that point. We're talking early days of like, it wasn't even really stateful packet inspection firewalls and stuff in those days. I'm dating myself, but networking and cybersecurity at a university level. And I went over to the dark side of the corporate world and started doing CISSP boot camp training and stuff like that. That's how I got involved with the ISC squared folks. I am one of those terrible monsters who writes the ISC squared CISSP test questions. So if any of you have tried to get a CISSP and had to take that test, I'm one of those monsters who were like, what idiot would write this terrible test question? This idiot would write that terrible test question. I'm sorry. Then I have been a CISO. I have owned my own consultancy where I did virtual CISO work. I've worked at every security integrator you can think of and done every kind of pre-sales job you can think of on both sides of the table. And now I lead this team of CISOs who we go out and we talk to CISOs about their problems and have kind of seen every kind of organization from the smallest community banks to kind of the biggest Fortune 10s, and seeing how they do things well and how they do things terribly, and what things you probably ought to be doing and what things you probably shouldn't be doing. And had a real glimpse into how the whole thing kind of works. Who here is representing small and medium businesses? That seems to be the focus today. Are most of you here representing small and medium businesses? Who here is excited to come here and have me give you a like list of things to tackle and maybe like buy this tool that's going to solve all your problems? Too bad, I'm not going to give you that today. So we're going to take a totally kind of different look and different approach at this today. So we are going to start off with some of that, like, hey, the sky is falling. Let's talk about why you should be afraid of cyber topics for a second. But really, the truth is, the real cost is not the cost that you see. It's not the real cost of cyber incidents is not the hard costs. And we'll talk about what the real costs are and how to deal with those. The real costs are business opportunity losses. And we'll talk about why that makes cyber mission critical for organizations. And what you'll hear a lot as you read literature and how do you deal with cybersecurity are things like, you need to make your cybersecurity business aligned, and you need to speak the language of business, and you need to make sure that you understand your risk and all these things. But no one ever tells you how to do that. What we're going to talk about today is how you do that. And that is at the core of how you do all of this. So rather than trying to figure out like, hey, how do I pick the right tool and how do I line up to a framework or whatever, we're going to take a look at how do you understand what your business is and what the risk is to your business so that you can create a reasonable, defensible security plan that you can right size to meet the needs of your organization, whether you have a giant team in your Rivian or if you have a tiny team in your Joe's Tire Shop. And we'll take a look at Joe's Tire Shop as a matter of fact. So this number that you see on the screen right now is the estimation for this year for the average cost of a breach to everyone. So if you look at Cyware's number, the average ransom is like $300,000 right now. That's average for everybody across to every size. The average ransom is $300,000. If you move that up to organizations of 1,000 workers or more, that becomes $1 million. Once you factor in the costs of not just the ransom, but the remediation and the investigation and the legal costs and everything else, $5 million is the average cost of a breach. It's a pretty hefty number. So you start figuring this is going to be your minimum annual loss exposure, right? On top of that, that is single breach loss exposure. You're going to have other potential loss exposures, and we'll talk about that a little bit. 24 days is the current estimate also for the average outage due to ransomware events. So oftentimes when you hear folks talk about like, hey, what is your RTO, RPO, recovery time objective? We have an immutable backup system or whatever, and the immutable backup people tell me that I can restore my backup in 24 hours. What they don't tell you is you can restore your backup in 24 hours from the time that you're allowed to push restore on the backup. And there's a lot of stuff that happens before that. You get hit by ransomware, the very first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have to realize that that happened. And that usually takes weeks or months before you even realize that they were in there, because they do all this kind of nation state actor low and slow stuff where they steal all of your data and turn off all of your AV and stuff before they ever do the noisy stuff that you saw. So the odds of you ever seeing them before they do the noisy thing are pretty slim. Once they start doing the noisy thing, you're going to be all hair on fire trying to figure out what happened. By the time you figure out what happened and call in cyber insurance or whoever, and they get you on the hotline and get you a breach coach and get your paperwork all done and your MSAs in place and your third party agreements, and your breach coach brings in your whoever, and you do all your contracts, your forensic investigator comes in and can't restore yet because they got to get all the forensic images and do all the investigation and figure out what happened. At which point your Active Directory has been compromised and they own your entire environment. You got to rebuild your entire Active Directory environment, and that's going to take a week. You're at 24 days, you're like 2 weeks or more, 3 weeks. Now you can hit restore on your Veeam or your Rubric or whatever thing you own and do your restore, at which point you get about 60 or 75% of your stuff back, which is the other thing that they don't tell you. So 24 days is the average production outage when you have an event. So yeah, things are bad. However, for a lot of you, you're probably thinking like, hey, this doesn't really pertain to me. By show of hands, who's too small or like your information is probably not valuable enough for you to be a target? This like doesn't pertain. Congratulations. A year ago, when I would give this talk, I'd get about 50-50 hands. Like people are coming around. Everyone's a target. SMBs overrepresented. 75% under 1,000 employees. 75% of ransomware events happen to organizations under 1,000 employees. There's no segment that is not represented. You'll notice some are like overrepresented. Public sector gets hit a lot. Professional services get hit a lot. And small end businesses are who are getting absolutely hammered by ransomware. So yeah. We talked about why it's bad and what the costs are. And yes, you should be afraid the sky is falling, but that is not why you should care about cybersecurity. Like that is not the point. Like being afraid of the cost is not the thing, because the cost is not the cost. And if you really think about it from a business point of view, and you think about a $5 million annual loss exposure, for some really small businesses, $5 million hit could be a major hit. But for most businesses, $5 million is not a one-time cost, is not an existential threat, right? Like if you had to outlay $5 million, it would probably not put your organization out of business, right? That is not the kind of thing that we need to be worried about, because that hard cost is not the real cost of cyber costs, right? When we start to think about like, what is the real reason? What is the real problem? What is the real reason we should be caring about cyber insurance? We have to start thinking about the world and digital transformation. And honestly, as I was listening to the president talk, I was like, he said it all. We should just pack it up and go home. Because he really hit most of the talking points, right? He mentioned like, hey, we live in this digital world where everything's connected, and digital transformation is the whole thing. So let's think about every business. So every business now is an IT business. There's no business that's not an IT business. Lots of businesses think they're other businesses. Businesses think that they sell food or a widget, or think that they sell whatever it is that they think that they do, but that's not what they do. What they do is IT. So let's take as an example, Joe's Corner Tire Store. Joe's Corner Tire Store thinks that he sells tires and does not think that he is an IT business, but that is not true at all, because Joe's Corner Tire Store has customers who probably make their appointments on some kind of web app. And then he has to ring up their tires in some kind of point of sale system. He's going to order his replacement tires in some kind of web app and do his inventory. He's got to pay his employees, and he's probably doing his taxes and all his HR in some kind of SaaS system. His customers then go out to Google and give him reviews and all that kind of stuff out on Google and social media. He probably wants to put ads out on social media and do SEO stuff so that he comes up first when people go search for tires. So they come to him instead of NTV or whatever. So his whole business is IT. The smallest part of his business is putting tires on cars. So what he thinks his business is tires, but what his business really is IT. And this is becoming true for every kind of business. So as we start thinking about this, not only is his entire business IT, now his entire business is cybersecurity. Because when we start thinking about the weak links in each of these chains, in that part that is his customers book their appointments via his app, what happens if I denial of service his app and now they can't book any appointments? On the part that is his point of sale, what if I data breach his point of sale and steal all of his customer information or the payment information? On the part that is his accounting and whatnot, business email compromise, and I trick his accounting person into cutting me a check or sending a fraudulent payment, etc. On the supply chain attacks, or maybe I do review bombing and I go on to Google and say that he's a really terrible place and run away all his clients. This is all cybersecurity stuff. So now his whole business is cybersecurity. It's very easy for me to tank Joe's Corner Tire Shop if I want to with cyber attacks. So now his whole business is cyber. It's mission critical for Joe's Tire Shop, right? And this is a thing that so many businesses have lost track of, is the fact that this is something that should be considered mission critical. There's legal precedent for this. So there's a set of legal precedents, and there's a court in Delaware, and most corporations are built in Delaware because the laws are very friendly to corporations in Delaware. Because of that, most corporations are built in Delaware. Consequently, that is the jurisdiction that has most corporate lawsuits and stuff. So the Delaware Chancery Court is who gets to set pretty much all the precedents about what happens in corporations. Delaware Chancery Court is who set these Caremark precedents. So back in the day, there was this company, Caremark. Caremark had a set of failings. They set this landmark lawsuit that's known now as Caremark lawsuit, where they said that your board of directors owes a duty of care, a fiduciary duty to the stakeholders, to the shareholders. And if they aren't doing a good job of managing the company, the shareholders can sue them personally and to try and recoup their investment. So if you, as a board director, intentionally run your company into the ground, you can be sued so that they can recoup their investment, is the point behind Caremark. You're held personally liable if you don't meet your duty. Seems like, how does that apply to any of this? But as time marches on, Bluebell Ice Cream. Bluebell Ice Cream had a bunch of instances where they had like food preparation problems and were giving people food poisoning, and it happened over and over and over and over. And what ended up happening was they applied this Caremark, and the stakeholders ended up suing the board and saying, hey, you did not have reasonable controls in place to prevent this from happening. And it ended up tanking our investment, and they sued them personally and they won. And two things happened here. First, they said, you have to have a reasonable system of monitoring to make sure that you are monitoring for things that are mission critical activities. So anything that's mission critical to your business, you have to monitor as part of your fiduciary duty. So Bluebell was a private company and not a public company. So usually when we think of a board of directors, we think of a public company, right? This was a private company who had a board of private owners whose share values got diluted because of they had to take a buy down, right? So now this applies to private companies and says you have to monitor things that are mission critical. Then Boeing, when they had the 747 MAX thing where the planes were crashing, that lawsuit expanded this even further and said mission criticality can be any part of your business, even if you have multiple types of things, multiple lines of business, even if you're a giant corporation or a small corporation, anything that can be considered like a main part of your business can be considered mission critical. So it expanded the meaning of that. Then last year, there was a McDonald's case where some HR director guy had not done enough about harassment. And they tried to apply Caremark instead of to directors to C-level managers. And the court said, absolutely, this applies to C-level managers. However, that case ended up getting dropped for a totally unrelated reason. But the precedent about it applying to managers stands, even though the case got dropped, it's going to get picked back up. So now this applies to board directors and managers, and there is a fiduciary duty for everyone to do things that are mission critical. Now, there have been several cases where people have tried to apply that cybersecurity is mission critical legally, and they have not held up yet. However, the courts have said very explicitly in their findings that it is possible for cybersecurity to be considered as mission critical. And there is a case in the courts right now that is probably going to change all of that. Additionally, one of the reasons that they said that it's not mission critical is because it's currently not illegal for you to not protect your stuff. That is also about to change, because the SEC proposed a set of rulings last year that are going to change things dramatically. So the SEC for a long time has had regulations, they just didn't have any teeth, right? The SEC regulates publicly traded companies and people who do investments. And they said, hey, you have to do some disclosures and stuff, but they didn't have any teeth. What they're trying to do is protect investors and protect your money when you invest by making companies be transparent and disclose where your money is invested. They know that cybersecurity is a big problem, and they wanted to try and force companies to do something about it. And they were like, how can we do that with the power that we have? And so what they did was they used this disclosure rule to enforce this in a big way. It was supposed to go into effect in April, but what happened was they have to put these rules out for a comment period, and they had a technical issue where some comments got lost, and so they had to reissue the comment period and reopen it. This is set to go into effect in October. There's no reason for us to believe that this will not go into effect in October. And there are two sets of rules. The first set of rules for public companies says, if you have an incident, you have to disclose like in 4 days or something super fast. You have to, in all of your filings, describe your risk management practices. There's all these requirements. Now, it's just a set of disclosures, but what's underneath that is, in order for you to disclose without lying, you actually have to build a program. Like, so what they realized that they were doing was, hey, they're forcing you basically to build this program. Now, this only applies to public companies. However, what's tricky here is there's a separate set of rules for firms that do investment, right? So if you invest people's money, there's a more strict set of rules about things you must have and ways that you must disclose. That applies to private companies that invest money, right? So it's even possible that if you raise funds on behalf of someone else, even not as an investment, like registered investment firm, you are any kind of company that invests money on or raises funds on behalf of someone else, this now applies to you. There are lots of ways that potentially this applies to you as a private firm. Also, it just kind of becomes a de facto standard. Right now, it applies to all these other kind of firms. Like, why wouldn't we just pick it up, right? Additionally, when we look at some like FTC, like as people get sued and like they have to make settlements and whatnot, the FTC in their settlement have been pretty clear about what's an expectation, and they use the same kind of language. So they basically started off saying, hey, you need to have something that is reasonably designed and comprehensive. And they, in 2009, said, hey, you should have something reasonably designed. And in 2019, amended that to you must have something that's reasonably designed. So now the real meat and potatoes behind this is, don't build this because you're afraid of $5 million. Build this because it's mission critical, because it's foundational to what your business is. Like, it's at the core of what your business is, right? So cybersecurity is a business driver. It should be a business driver. How many of you have all of the budget and people and buy-in that you want? Anybody? Why not? Why not? I'm seriously asking. Why don't you have your budget? Why aren't you getting budget? Not important. Not an issue till it's an issue. They don't understand it. Cybersecurity does not make money for the company. God, that is the one, isn't it? But does it not make money for the company? Oh, but it so does. Didn't we just notice that like it's the whole business? Like it is mission critical. And the fact that the company doesn't realize that it makes money for the company is the problem. The fact that it's not important until it's important. The fact that they don't see the value in it is the whole thing, right? Especially in the SMB. So we're going to take a look at that. So the key here is to understand what creates value for your business, who decides that, like where is that value determined, right? So what is the value? Who owns you, right? Especially in SMBs, who owns you is very important, right? So are you public? Are you private? Are you owned by a VC? Are you owned by angels? Are you owned by a single provider? Are you owned by who? Like who owns you, right? Each of those folks have a different want from you. And the way that the easiest way to find this out is to go buddy up to your CFO or CFO equivalent, because they know the answer to this. There is an investment cycle, right? So if you are owned by a VC firm, they're looking for short-term return, right? They came in to give you a round of investment and they're looking to get their money back pretty rapidly. They're looking for growth. They want to see growth. Your targets are going to be growth targets. They probably don't even care about profitability targets. They probably only care about growth targets. So revenue probably is not even a thing they care about. They probably only care about growth. So how can we use our program to help grow? Can I leverage the things that I can do to help grow the company? Or if I'm owned by a PE, they probably do care more about that kind of long-term new revenue streams. Or if I'm trying to IPO and go public, and what I want to do is like move into public, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff we have to do. I have to control my SG&A expenses, stuff like that. You are an SG&A expense, so governance and administrative costs in their eyes, right? How do you take your stuff and stop being an SG&A, right? How do you get value? How does your company determines that? If you're public, it's shareholders. How does your company handle that? Is it stock price? Are you issuing dividends? Like how do you function, right? Like what is it that you're aimed at? How many of you know the answer to those questions? Good on you. How many of you have applied your cybersecurity program to function within the answer to those questions? So determines where that value lies. What is important to our company? When is that value created? We can start to figure out like where is it determined? We know where to look, right? So, hey, what is the value, right? There are a few places you're going to find this. There are like three main types of financial statements, right? We've got our income statement, we've got our cash flow statement. I have a paper out there I can point you to that will like give you the 101 if you need that information on where to find these things. But once you know which measures to look for, and plus just go talk to your CFO, he will tell you all this information. He'll tell you, here's the one I care about. I care about EBITDA, right? Even if one they care about a lot, they're interested. You can very much pull the levers of EBITDA as a security person, because that is earnings before tax and depreciation and whatnot, right? That is all that. How much money did we bring in before we accounted for depreciation of stuff that we're paying for over time? So that CapEx versus OpEx conversation, did I pay cash? Is it a service? Is it a box that I bought? All that Am I going to put it in the cloud? Am I going to put it on-prem? How am I going to finance this stuff? All moves that EBITDA number. And you can very much move that target and become a partner to your business just by putting some thought into how you procure stuff and stop being a cost center and start being a profit driver. One of the big languages of business is risk, but so often security folks use risk wrong and understand risk incorrectly. I so often see folks, they'll show me their risk register, and what they will have built is a threat register, or what they will have built is a cyber risk view for executives. When we talk about risk, there is cyber risk and there is business risk. What we have here is a list of things that are business risks. So if you are showing your executives and your board risks that say things like, our risks are, we have a bunch of outdated PCs that need to be patched. Our risks are exposure to malware. Our risks are slow patching cycles. Our risks are things like that. Those are not risks in their eyes. Risks in the business side are operational risks, loss of productivity, regulatory compliance risks, legal risks, risk to reputational, like hits to your stock account, the ability to be like first mover, health and safety risk. Those are business risks. And so what you have to do is be a translator. You have to be able to translate those things that you said that were like, hey, my big risk is I have these antiquated machines, turn that IT risk into a business risk and be basically a translator. You said earlier, when you think about the costs, these are the costs that we were talking about in the first you go to your folks and say, hey, I have $5 million a year loss exposure. They hear, yeah, $5 million, whatever. If there's a chance we might lose $5 million. What's the chance of that? Like, I don't know, but it's probably not that high, and whatever, we'll figure it out if I have to figure out how to cover $5 million, right? The real the stuff that motivates them, the market cost, opportunity loss cost. These are the things that for business, essential events that are the business killers. These are the Joe's tire shop puts you out of business opportunity cost stuff. The first mover advantage, the stuff that falls into communities. I'm in the middle of an M&A, and I have a secret. When you look at things like what happened back years ago to Yahoo when they were trying to get purchased and they had to breach, and then they totally undermined their entire value, and they had to give their entire company away. They lost billions of dollars. That is an existential opportunity, right? If you look at what happened in the Starwoods and Marriott's acquisition, where Marriott bought Starwoods had a breach, and then Marriott had to pay the 4% of revenue GDPR fine that Starwoods had incurred pre-M&A, right? They had to pay someone else's 4% of revenue fine. Like, that is an opportunity. Translate IT risks into business risks. When you do things like board of director type of challenges. Oftentimes, I also, not only the difference between IT and threat risk. I'm walking away and I'm not being loud in the mic. The other problem that we run into a lot is the idea between risk and threat. And what happens a lot is we see folks showing performance indicators and threat to boards and to executives. And there is a big difference between risk and threat, right? So one of the other things that you will see a lot is, I mentioned, like, people say, oh, we have ransomware, or we have insider threat, or whatever it is. Those things are threats. Threats are events or actors that could potentially harm us, whether they're intentional, unintentional, The threat is the thing that can be mitigated through a security measure. The risk is the harm itself, right? And so often these two terms get intermingled and mixed, right? And not that there's not a reason to brief your executives and board and whoever in on threat. There is, like annually, right? We will annually give you the threat briefing. It makes sense to tell folks about threats at the time of, hey, I'm trying to get your buy-in for project A versus project B. I'll tell you about threat possibly. But in that every day, I'm trying to get you to understand why I want to do this and what you're getting for your money and why we're moving the needle. Risk is what we're trying to explain. What is the harm? What we're trying to explain is what happens here. What is the actual financial cost? What is the operational impact? Not we have malware exposures, we have ransomware exposures. Those things don't matter to businesses. They don't understand them in that way. So let's take a look at this. When we think about what is risk, the risk calculation from the old CISSP is risk times impact, or likelihood times impact. I don't like likelihood because that is statistically incorrect. It's actually probability, because probability is how likely it is to happen versus likelihood is like after the fact. We won't get into that. But you can decompose this, and you can see that threat is actually a subcomponent of probability. So if you look in like FAIR, when they have you decompose, trying to figure out how to figure out what the probability and impact is so you can calculate your risk, threat is a subcomponent of it, right? So probability is the threat times the vulnerability. And when you deconstruct that, the threat is frequency of contact times the probability of action, blah, 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 blah. So you can see that when we equate this to this, this is actually a subcomponent of this. So when we're telling executives, hey, what our risk is I will show you a real world example here in a second. And where we get this wrong a lot is when we're developing KPIs and KRIs. So a lot of the time you'll be writing a KRI, and we have folks come to us all the time and say, hey, I want to write a KRI. And what they end up writing is KPIs. A KRI is a way to quantify risk, to measure it, and you would show this to executives or to a board. A KPI is a performance measure that says how good your program is running, and this is for you. This is for CISOs. This is for your team. This is your dashboard to see how you are functioning. You might share this with like an executive again at the time that you're trying to make the this versus that A/B decision. Here's a real world example. So we had a company come to us and they said, hey, we wrote these KRIs and we want you to help us tune them up. This is what we had initially, and here's what we did to fix them. So we had this number of outgoing emails that contained unprotected, highly sensitive data, passport numbers, credit card numbers, etc. The number of outgoing automated emails was our description, number of outgoing records sent via email, number of client communications sent via email that were unprotected, number of malware attempts that were not detected, ones that were blocked. That was their KRIs. Those are clearly all performance indicators and not risk indicators. So they tuned them up, or that was their tune-up. Then we came back and we talked about it, and they were like, okay, what we're going to do is try and layer in not just like the number, but can we put a target on it, right? Because that's the first step in moving from a performance to a risk, right? Is instead of just like, hey, here's the number, well, what's the target? What would we like to have? Like, what's the difference against the target, right? So percentage difference against the target for compliance. Like, hey, what was our target? How much did we move the needle? On a per business unit, how much did we move the needle? So the target was set to 0. They had 150,000 emails that went out that contained unmasked like PII in Q1. So that to me, like when you first expose that to folks, that already looks bad. Like we sent out, even after our thing, we sent out 150,000 pieces of PII looks bad, even though you're trying to tell the good story, right? So the way that you flip this is very, very easy, right? Simple quantification. So if we just quantify that number of emails instead of saying, hey, here's a bunch of emails, like executives don't care, they don't understand, they're not going to give you money for that. That doesn't move the needle for your program, that doesn't tell the story, that doesn't make it mission critical for your business, that doesn't earn you $1, that doesn't help you buy a control, right? What we did here was we said, okay, number of emails that contain unprotected data multiplied by the average per record cost for a data breach is $160 per record at a 40% reduction of 150,000 emails. That's 60,000 emails times $160. That's a $9.6 million exposure reduction. That is a compelling story. What we did with this program was reduce your risk by $9 million. Boom, that was enlightening. That opened their eyes. That was like, oh my God, you did something that makes sense. We spent $250K or whatever on this tool and it reduced our risk by $9.6 million in this first quarter. Yes, here's some more money to go do more of that. Yes, here is a guy to go work on that project. Yes, here is the buy-in that you needed to continue to do that. And when Joe Schmo business leader comes back and says, we hate this project because it's a pain in the butt and it blocks my emails, business leader says, we don't care, it saved us $9.6 million, right? So this is very easy to do. It used to be very hard to do when we talk about quantification. It used to be a real non-starter. Like you just couldn't do it, right? Like you had to be a genius or an expert or have a statistics PhD, right? And probably there are a bunch of people here at Illinois State who have statistics PhDs who could help you do this, but you don't need that anymore. Used to be you had to do FAIR, and I showed you the whole where you had to decompose the stuff and you had to get experts, and basically you had to train the experts on confidence level and say, hey, guess, and then be 90% confident in your guesses. But nowadays, so many people have productized this. The cyber insurance folks have partnered with some products where they give them real-time cyber claim data that will tell them the impact and the real amounts that they've paid in claims. So now the risk information about probability and impact is right there. Like, hey, we know what the probability is because this is how frequently we pay claims. We know what the impact is because this is how much we paid. We can do it across different types of things: ransomware, insider threat, business email compromise. We can do it across verticals for this vertical, for this size, etc. It's a product you can go buy now. And it's very simple and it's very easy. And now you can tell the story that is, I have $134 million a year risk exposure. My program that costs $4 million a year buys down our risk exposure by whatever it is, $50 million a year, leaving a $84 million risk exposure. For $4 million, I bought down your risk by $50 million. Your residual risk exposure is $84 million. Are you cool with that? Are you cool with losing $84 million a year potentially? No. What are you comfortable with? $50 million a year? Cool. So do we need to bring down that risk by $34 million? Okay. Or $44 million or whatever it is. Well, here's where we are compliance-wise. Here's what our minimum exposure is. Here's what our maximum exposure is. To get to what you would like, this is what I would like to invest. If I invest $4 million, then I can bring down your risk exposure by that $34 million or whatever it is to get within your tolerance. That is a compelling story that tells the story to the business that is, I am not just a cost center, that makes it important right now, that makes me not just be another like widget, right? But this still even is insurance-y a little bit, right? We talked a little bit more about ways that I can still align this even further, right? Like, are there things that I can do to take it further and really be a financial driver? Can I make my program actually line up with the business? Can I create cost reductions? Can I decrement old systems that save us licensing? Can I do cost avoidance? Can I enable new types of business models? Are there things that I do? Could we possibly turn my new SOC capability into an outsourcing model and turn it around for our clients? Or is there something that we could offer to our clients? Can I use it as a competitive differentiator and say, hey, we do this and our competitor doesn't. If you care about security, we have a differentiator and charge extra for it. Can we bake it into when people are sending us the questionnaire that says, hey, do you do this? Can I bake it into that sales process and say, hey, there's this project that I want. I'll just tack it on to the sales process and make them pay for it as part of the sales process? Or do you see it and go, oh God, I have to fill out this questionnaire. What a pain. I don't know how to answer it. Like, you can partner with the sales team and make it part of what you're trying to accomplish. You can create revenue with your security products, right? You can do all the things we talked about, aligning spending, aligning with the business units, and becoming a real partner so that you are a financial driver. Yeah, we're out of time. So where should you be spending your money? You should be buying down your risk. That's the most important thing. Once you understand your risk, you got to buy it down. And that's the way to look at it. What is my risk? Buy it down, right? And that's the view of it. So if I'm buying a tool and it's cost me $200,000, how much risk am I buying down? If I'm buying cyber insurance and the policy is $100,000 a year and I'm getting $1 million worth of coverage, I'm buying down my risk by $1 million for $100,000. It's a pretty good investment. There's not a lot of tools that will buy down my risk that amount for that dollar amount, right? Above and beyond that, though, when we start looking at cyber insurance, especially in the SMB space, there's trade-offs that happen very early. They're going to want you to have a bunch of stuff. They're going to want you to have MFA. MFA is kind of a starting point, right? Like, if you don't have MFA, start there. You're not going to be able to get cyber insurance without it. It's one of the like kind of must-haves, right? There are some other things that you can do that will just lessen your burden, right? If you implement like AI, if you just leverage like ML technologies or Microsoft Copilot, you can lessen that. We talked about that long runway. You can lessen that long runway. Doing endpoint XDRs, EDRs also improve your response time significantly. Incident response reduces the costs. And that's why all these things are baked into what your insurance providers are going to ask of you, because these are the things that they know lessen the costs. So doing the things slowly that are the things that cyber insurers want you to do will put you on the path, but don't do them at the speed that they want them to do you want them to do them. Don't take the outside input. Don't necessarily go out and say, hey, I need to align to a framework and I'm just going to do all the things on a framework. Start at the idea that I'm buying down my risk. What is the thing that moves the needle for my business? How do I be a partner to the business? How do I move the needle for my business? And then what makes sense from a risk buy down, risk transfer point of view? If cyber insurance works into that and the things that they want you to do work into that and it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, who cares? You're investing in the right ways. You're telling the story that you need to tell. And if that is one or two things, if that is just endpoint security, great. If it's a whole suite of things, great. If it's outsourcing, great. If it's insourcing, great. It doesn't matter. You don't need a checkbox to figure that out. You don't need a framework to figure that out. Figure that out for yourself by understanding what your risk is. And it's not as hard as it used to be. So those are the key takeaways. Cost isn't what it used to be. Costs aren't what we thought they were. Risk reduction. We talked about it. Questions? I think we're out of time. Questions? Yes. Yes. So there are a few things to note there. So all those things that we talked about are going to impact the boards. And yes, the boards are going to be held liable. But for the folks in this room, there are some things you need to know. You should be on the D&O policy, both named and positionally. So named is you by name, and positionally is you by like you're the CISO or the VP or whatever. As the CISO, VP, whatever, that is while you work there. So if something happens while you work there, you are covered by the insurance by name is after you leave. So that's what happened to Joe Sullivan, was he was not named, so he was gone, he was not covered. That would not cover you against illegal stuff like Joe did, but it would cover you against civil stuff. However, this has been a real non-starter for folks, and I will give you an anecdote. My buddy Matt Sharp worked for a company who got purchased by a pretty major conglomerate, and he was a kind of big time CISO. And they came in and they said, "Hey, we're going to make you the CISO of the big conglomerate, and you're going to win that acquisition, basically." And he said, "That's great, but I need to be on the DNO." And they're like, "No, we put no C-levels on the DNO." And he was like, "That's a deal breaker for me. I will not be the CISO of a global company without being on the DNO." And they're like, directors and officers insurance policy. Yeah, it put me on the spot. It covers you if you get sued personally, right? For exactly what Joe got sued for, right? No, we don't put anybody on that. We don't carry DNO. And he quit his job. He quit his like $650,000 a year CISO job or whatever. They would not put him on the DNO. So take that for what it's worth. That's my anecdote. Like, that's how you don't be Joe Sullivan. Also, just don't lie. Don't cover up. The cover up is worse than the crime. Like, that's the other question. All right. Lunchtime, break time, something. Let's go drink.